Good afternoon. I would like to welcome the participants and also the speakers to this already fifth webinar of the ELNA network. I can see slowly more colleagues are joining us. This is the webinar of the Education Leadership Network Europe, which is a new consortium established in September, supported by the Erasmus Fund. And the focus of this network is to discuss about collaborative educational leadership, democratic decision-making with different kind of stakeholders involved. The whole network has already 100 official partners, but the network itself is always open to accept more partners in the network. And it has 5 main leaders, the education employers, EFI, who are responsible for the coordination of the project, teacher trade unions, ETUCE, the school head associations, ESHA, the Parents Association, EPA, European Parents Association, and the students from the secondary school level, OBESU. I am Agnes Roman. I'm the Senior Policy Coordinator of ETUCE, which is the umbrella organization of teacher trade unions. And I would like to welcome you to this webinar. You are all muted except the speakers, but I don't want to see it as a discouragement of participation and active role taken in this webinar, because if you can see on the top, there is a chat button, but also there is a Q&A button. So your comments, questions are warmly welcome. But at the same time, we will open later Slido polls, and this will be very important to express your opinion and also as a basis for to have a discussion with the speakers. Attractiveness of the staff working in higher education sector is not so much an issue. Lots of higher education students would like to be academics. I was like myself. But the issue is about the retention. Mostly the young academics, women academics are the first to fall out from the academic profession because it's very difficult to get permanent positions. We know that there are several problems for young and specifically women academics and academics from different social economic background to really have a permanent position. And this is why we think it is important to discuss among us, European Commission, employers, academics, and students about the importance of collaboration among us, collaboration to improve higher education in general, quality of higher education, and also to provide certain solutions to support academics and students. So collaborative leadership, collegial governance, and social dialogue, this is what we also would like to touch upon. The webinar title is Collaborative Governance in Higher Education Institutions for Quality Learning and Teaching. And I would like to welcome the speakers, Jan Malbido from the European Commission DG EAC, Alessandro Arienzo from the Italian Federation of Knowledge Workers FLC-CGIL, Iris Kirmisolu from the European Students' Union, and Susanna Niistö-Suvaranta from the Finnish Education Employers. Before I'm giving the floor to the first presenter, I would like to open a Slido poll because I know that we are getting more and more, already 31 participants, but I would like to ask you who you are, where do you work? I would like to give the floor to the European Commission because we asked Jan Malbido about to present us the upcoming proposal of attractive and sustainable careers in higher education and how this new initiative, which is coming in the spring, can contribute to quality education and supportive learning environment and also collaboration. We know that there are several studies, but also the Education and Training Monitor mentioned issues concerning academic careers and career progression, career development. So we would like to hear what will be this new initiative and how can it support academics. The floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the invitation. So indeed, now at the moment we are working on several initiatives in the field of higher education. 3 big ones. We are working on a communication on European degree. We are working on proposals for council recommendations on quality assurance and recognition systems. And the third strand of work is we're working on proposals for a council recommendation on attractive and sustainable careers in higher education. First, I would like to clarify that these 3 different topics are all independent. So they all have merit in their own. Of course, one can see links in between the different topics because, as we'll touch upon, everything is linked to everything. But these gonna be proposals for attractive and sustainable careers in higher education for all staff, regardless of whether they are involved in certain type of cooperation or not. So there are several problems at stake. This is only a very small list that stem from different sources and different initiative that we get information from. One of them being the European University Initiative. You know, it's a very important initiative at European Union level, where you have many universities that work together to develop joint educational provision. But we hear from them that they would actually like to do more, but staff kind of lack the incentives to dedicate the time it needs and the efforts it needs, because it is a lot of work. And it is not always properly valorized in their career development, career progression, and so on. We still, this is something that is probably not new, a lack of parity of esteem between teaching and researching staff, with the teaching staff having slower career progression than those that do mostly research. And clearly also a lack of attractive working conditions to retain the staff, as Agnes was just saying earlier, with an example being only 56% of doctorate holders are employed full-time in academia. And if you compare it with the private sector, where it's 87% of them, of course, that's a strong incentive to not stay in the academia in comparison to moving to the private sector. So we are building these proposals on, well, many consultations that we've had over the last years, but also 3 studies that are to be published. We have an OECD evidence review, and a study that is going to be published from ECORIS, which also included survey, result of surveys, consultation, focus groups, and so on, and a literature review on well-being. Some of the outcome of this consultation and evidence gathering reviews that we see is that clearly they need more efforts to develop incentive for academics, especially if we want them to take part into transnational activities, like it is our role at European Union level to promote, and to be capable and be rewarded for also developing innovative pedagogical program, high quality pedagogical program, regardless of the fact whether this is international or not. We see that non-traditional academic career paths with career breaks, and one typical example is childcare or taking up duty elsewhere, are rarely valorized and can actually negatively affect career progression. So there's definitely more effort to do in there to make academic career attractive for those people that tend to go on childcare more often, for example. It was very clear from all the consultation that academics frequently work very long hours and undertake multiple additional duties, which are not duties they became necessarily academics for. I'm thinking a lot of administration that comes with many responsibilities, which leads to very often unsatisfactory working conditions and a bad work-life balance. There is still the prevalent bias towards research in incentive, which I mentioned earlier. And yes, it is important to boost recognition of non-research activities next to them, of course, and include non-measurable components in career appraisal, at least so qualitative ones. So the recommendation will be structured on 3 different pillars. These are the 3 things we need to structure the recommendation on. First, the need to promote, recognize, and valorize mobility and deep transnational cooperation. That can be by integrating objectives related to transnational cooperation in staffing policies. It can be by valorizing these activities through academic career, in career assessment, counting in the working hours, providing sustainable career perspectives also, and talent management measures for academics that are engaged in this type of cooperation. More generally, we need to promote, recognize, valorize the diversity of academic roles, including innovative teaching. So that can be by promoting approaches to academic career path and assessment that value the different academic roles. That can be by supporting teaching enhancement, operational disparity of esteem for teaching as compared to research. Encouraging every member of staff conducting teaching activities to receive appropriate training and support through their career. And of course, the need to promote attractive working conditions, which goes along with respecting academic freedom, promoting diversity and gender equality in academic careers. And there, of course, we need to work together with the sector, with social partners to ensure the effectiveness of the mechanisms that already exist and that are used and defend academic freedom, including freedom of teaching. We have to guarantee that the decision-making processes respect social dialogue, foster the active participation of academic staff also in the governance of higher education institutions, and develop or update actions regarding the workload, the time management, well-being of staff in higher education to reduce the gap. And here a lot of course, thinking of new ways of achieving this objective or taking inspiration from existing practices. So a lot of peer learning elements will be also in the proposals. We are targeting, of course, staff based in higher education institutions who undertake both teaching and research, but also staff who do only teaching or teaching mostly, regardless of their status or their contractual conditions. Some targeted recommendation may also cover professional service staff who are not strictly considered as academic staff, but they have a extensive high-level expertise in strategic, in legal, or communication functions, so as to be more comprehensive in the recommendations that we will put for the member states and the social partners to discuss. So I will stop here. Thank you very much, and I give you back the floor.
Thank you very much. Just a follow-up question, because these are very important to highlight to member states about improving the working conditions and academic career for the academics. But one thing you didn't mention, and which is really bothering, for example, the academics, is the sustainable public investment to higher education, because this leads a lot towards what you were saying, long working hours and additional duties, a lot of project-based work and project-based contracts. To what extent this council recommendation will touch upon this issue?
Well, of course, you know, here we're navigating in sensitive matters, because education and higher education is not a competence of the European Union. So what we can say and what we will stress, of course, through the proposal is that higher education should be properly financed. So higher education institutions should receive the adequate sustainable funding resources in order also to offer academic staff proper working conditions. So this is more an underlying factor, precondition to everything that we are going to propose.
Thank you very much, and let's continue the discussion after the presentations. But firstly, I would like to ask the colleagues to present us the first Slido poll outcome. Who are we? Who are the 35 people who are sitting here? Universities, excellent. Employer organizations, trade unions, NGO. Okay. Early childhood education, we lost them. We had early childhood webinar earlier and vocational webinar. So, okay, so we are kind of like the academic community, as I can see. Thank you very much for sharing the outcome. And I would like now to give the floor to Alessandro Arienzo from the Italian Federation of Knowledge Workers, trade unions. I asked you to try to summarize, how do you see collaborative collegial governance and collaboration, collaborative institutional leadership for supporting working environment in higher education, specifically in Italy? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Agnes. I'm very happy to join you, and I will be dealing basically with some of the same problems at the stake that Jean-Maël Bidot just presented us. I'm very much happy of his presentation as a union member, but also as a teacher in university. I really think that he has addressed, and your question as well, what is really the issue at the moment. I will deal with a broader problem of institutional leadership issue from the point of view of the Italian situation, because as you probably know, the Italian university system has a long tradition of institutional self-government and academic freedom that is recognized expressly by the Republican Constitution. So this dimension cannot, beyond precise limits, be undermined by government intervention and must be regulated by law. This is a strong characteristic of the Italian system that it's a relevant one to pose to the floor to discuss. However, these two founding principles of the Italian university system have suffered a strong impact of the social and economic crisis of 2008 and the austerity and budget constraints and measures that followed in 2010, in particular with the reform of the university system, 2010. A reform that pursued a managerial management model that has greatly reduced spaces for collegiality and autonomy, and I want to a bit address that with you today. The impact, and this is my main message, has been significant on three different levels. And when we want to focus on institutional self-government and academic freedom, we need to take a vision on all these three levels. The first one is the level of the governance of the system as a whole. Thus, the relationship between the national authorities and the institutions, the university institution. The second level concerned the governance of individual institutions, how they govern themselves inside. The third one that was fully addressed by the previous presentation is the dimension of self-governance and participation and quality working condition within the university community in the life of the institutions. The Italian case. In terms of the governance of the system, after a season of strong autonomy, university policies have been globally re-centralized in Italy, especially those of expenditure and budget. The increasing distribution of resources, it has already been mentioned, on evaluation or project-based has been accompanied in Italy by an increasing rigid control over the governance of the university, Italian university, which has greatly reduced in practice the ability to adopt a truly autonomous development or even investment policies from the point of view of the single institution. Even representative institutions such as the Consiglio Nazionale Universitario, the National University Council, that it's a representative council, or the Consiglio Nazionale degli Studenti Universitari, it's the equivalent for the students, have been, their role has been greatly reduced within the university system, while the Council of Director or the evaluation agency as two main actors has been greatly increased in the role in the Italian system. Managerial centralization on one side and a strong technocratic drives mark this transition in 2010. A transition that has somehow also accentuated these strong pushes toward the precarization of work that you, Agnes, just mentioned, but also that Jean-Maël mentioned. That was, by the way, already it has been already underway for at least 3 decades. So it doesn't start in 2010. This is the first level. The second level, in terms of governance of individual institution, the 2010 reform has greatly accentuated the role and function of director, the administrative board in the Italian universities, and director general. This is against an overall downsizing of representative institutions, such as the Academic Senate, the Department Council. Indeed, when seen from the point of view of other systems, different from the Italian one, still the representative processes within the Italian system are quite strong when compared with the other countries, but yet those have been greatly limited in the Italian system. The third level, as I just mentioned, is the limitation inherent in the institutional culture of the Italian university system. While the role of academic staff and student representatives somehow remain significant in our institution, the functions and the role of technical and administrative staff is still largely undersized and unrecognized in our system. Recent reform, those in 2020, but other reforms that succeeded that have stiffened and aggravated the separation between the teaching and the administrative bodies and staff in the university. And this is also a point that Jean-Maël touched, that it's very, very relevant. This greater separation between academics and administrative staff. Ultimately, the Italian case shows, in my opinion, two important aspects that concerning the relationship between collegial governance and collaborative institutional leadership. The first is the need to intervene simultaneously on the different levels, these three different levels of the system government, the self-government of the individual institution and the community building. Community building is really a crucial moment in the life of any educational institution like university, but also schools. University, like all the educational institutions, are communities that live by participation and commitment. Therefore, the guarantee of supporting working and living environment is necessary. Adequate salaries, perspective of careers, the fight against precariousness must accompany also sound representative and participatory institutional processes with clear, indeed, and transparent institutional lines of governance and decision. We are not asking for assembly in any moment of the institutional life, but yet the process of decision within an institution must be respectful of the professionalism and skills of university workers, the need for participation of students and staff, and the need for collegiality of participation of each of us in a community that is a educating community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. I have some follow-up questions, but I would like to discuss with you also afterwards. First of all, you mentioned that there was this reform in 2010. You are not fully happy with it as academic trade unions. Was there any social dialogue before organizing or making this reform? And what kind of messages would you have for other countries' academics about definitely what not to copy-paste from this reform from the Italian system? Sorry.
Well, from my point of view and the point of view of my union in Italy, there's nothing like a full social dialogue. In the 2010, indeed, the context was a context of strong reform measure due to the economic crisis, so there was really no possibility to discuss with the government at that time about the reforming of the system. There was a struggle and the attempt of university communities to answer and propose different measures for reforming the system. I would say that a full social dialogue and the centrality also of national bargaining and discussion it's the way forward. It's the way forward to have our communities committed and the society as well.
Thank you very much. Of course, we are hearing a lot of excuses why social dialogue is not possible, because there is crisis, because there is emergency situation, because we need very short, very quick changes. We don't have time for dialogue. It's too heavy. It's too bureaucratic. So, of course, there is always reasons of not having social dialogue and not having cooperation with stakeholders, but we shouldn't really accept it, I guess. I don't know what is your opinion, Iris, from the Students' Union, who I would like to ask you as the next speaker, and whom we asked about presenting what do you think and what are the demands of ESU concerning collaborative institutional management, and, for example, the role of the student boards and students' involvement in improving the students' well-being too. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I mean, I would start off with saying that the democratic model of higher education is really what makes higher education in Europe higher education in Europe. It's the foundation, the basis, even the Bologna process, collegiality and co-creation are one of the fundamental values of the whole process. And as it had a very rough start, and many of you probably remember, it got better when actually stakeholders got involved into decision making. And generally, we see that there's a shift from the shared governance to more of a corporate model of governance in higher education, which disempowers to some extent. And there's a lot of arguments why we need collaboration and why we need co-creation. On the one hand, I mean, students are the main primary benefactor of higher education. So from a democratic point of view, we should have a say into what is happening. We also know firsthand how things are going. We can mirror if things are effective or if things create problems, especially also, for example, when it comes to the quality of teaching. And by actually using us as informants and basing then decision making based on this, you also enhance legitimacy of whatever is being decided in the governance model. Then as a third argument generally is that also student unrest will be deterred if you actually involve us as stakeholders. So which is a cooperative argument and maybe actually defeats the purpose. Sometimes it's good to have a bit of unrest, but it's for sure also a way to bring people together instead of polarizing different stakeholders in higher education. And fourthly, active citizenship is something we need to practice. And by having students involved and having students as co-creators, we let them practice also to be active as citizens in the higher education environment. And of course, also the aspect of the community building, the question of belonging to higher education is very important. We are in times of, we are at the height of massification. Our student body is extremely big, extremely diverse, and we are losing a little bit the sense of belonging, which has very bad implications for the higher education sectors, because in the end, it's students who become adults and go part of the general public, and we need us to defend also higher education and to not lose the idea why higher education is actually important and should have, for example, academic freedom. And there's a lot of examples how this can be done and where it can be successful. I mean, me as a student representative on national level in Germany back in the day, I remember that we had a really good connection to the academic staff council. So sometimes if they felt like they cannot bring things to the Senate or to the faculty or to the press, they would approach us because we had built a really good trust relationship, and they are in a very bad power relationship with some of the leaderships in higher education. So it was a way for them to collaborate with us so we could support them actually. We also see that, for example, currently, you have a lot of cuts in funding for higher education. And back in the day, I actually collaborated with the Rectors' Conference in my federal state and was able to fight against some of the cuts that were proposed by the ministry. And this was possible because students and the academic staff together went to the streets and campaigned against it. During the crises we had in the last years, it becomes also very apparent. During COVID, everybody was kind of lost. So there was a lot of collaboration during COVID, actually. And a lot of students said in the end, okay, it was not perfect, but the higher education institution, the politicians, etc., they all did their best. We worked together and we did what we could. But this changed with Ukraine. With Ukraine, there was less cooperation and more students felt very unhappy with what had been decided because students were not involved in the decision making. So, you can really, we have it also in our Bologna with Student Eyes publication that will come out soon, that there's really a stark difference between students being way more okay with how COVID was managed than the cost of living crisis due to the involvement of students actually. And currently for ESU, I mean, we were co-writers of the ESGs for quality assurance. So this for sure helped to have much more acceptance for many of the Bologna commitments, but also right now there's the whole thing on the attractiveness of careers, and we, for example, put forward also a very extensive position that is in support of the rights of workers in higher education, which is possible because we do collaborate, for example, with ETUCE on a international level, and therefore have an exchange about what's going on and can then also support higher education staff. So it's a win-win if you collaborate in the sense, and where you disagree, and it's okay as well.
Thank you very much, Iris. Just a question, because you mentioned European standards and guidelines, which of course ESU has co-created, but I understand that is now under again a revision. And you mentioned also the rights of workers, so a kind of maybe tricky question. Do you think that concerning the ESG and relation to quality assurance in higher education institutions should be also checking up, for example, the working conditions and permanent contracts, a number of permanent contracts of academic staff, and the ESG could help on that? I wonder whether you have discussed about this.
Well, I would be lying if I would say we have a very specific positioning on this, so I cannot say that. But generally, we believe that the social dimension of higher education should also be ensured. And at the moment, the quality assurance systems are the one system that is implemented through which you really could do this. And the principles and guidelines of the social dimension of the higher education area, the European higher education area, also cover staff and cover the working conditions of staff and the rights of staff. So we for sure would say there should be elements incorporated. How this is being done is a different question. If you do it based on, I don't know, the number of staff versus students or salaries or whatever, this is what the indicators are, you know, that can be discussed, but generally, yeah, we think the social dimension should be quality assured.
Thank you very much. I would like to give the role to the last speaker, but before that, I think I didn't open yet the Slido question 2, which is a question to the participants, an opinionate survey. The question is how to make higher education institutions attractive places to support student and staff well-being. What are the challenges? You can propose several challenges. We already mentioned a lot of issues here this afternoon. While you are answering, I would like to give the floor to Susanna Nisto-Suvaranta from the Finnish Education Employers, because I asked you, Susanna, about your opinion about the collaborative institutional management practices to support quality education in Finland. Are there any good practices you can present us, and what are the Finnish Education Employers' views on collaborative leadership? The floor is yours. Thank you for sharing your presentation already.
Yes, thank you, Agnes, so much, and so nice to be here. I hope you can see my presentation well. So I must say that my presentation is quite practical, but of course I have to start with some basic things, but then I have also cases in the end, so maybe it's something that you understand what is going on. So my content, first about Finnish education system in general, then some challenges in higher education, and then I have cases from quality work, and then also from collaboration and the cases from national and institutional level. But first I want to start with Finnish education system, and I want to point out that the most important thing here is, if we think about collaboration and quality, is actually that we have access for students from all the levels to the end. So from the bottom to higher education, to universities and to universities of applied sciences. It means that those levels are also dependent from each other. For example, the requirements for applicants from upper secondary school to higher education are the same in national level. So we have shared system to evaluate our applicants. It's different in universities of applied sciences and in the universities, but still it's in the national level. So that's very important. And then second one that I want to pick up is the fact that we are actually still, we are seeing that teaching as a profession is very attractive. And I think it has something to do, attractive profession. It has something to do with the culture, with the appreciations, values in Finland in that way. So it means that as employers, we can hire qualified teachers to all levels. But I must say that there is, of course, always a threat in this strength also, because this can change for many reasons, like lack of resources, many changes at the same time in the education sector, which is going on in Finland also. Students' well-being issues is one at the moment. We are discussing a lot, especially after the COVID. And little kind of more or less challenges or problems that can affect to this. Then another national level strength is actually our quality assurance. It was funny that you asked about the quality assurance. This is a little bit different point from quality assurance, but I think that our strength in here is that actually all the educational institutions, they are part of it. We had different kind of evaluations. It is not based on control, but to shared understanding of that, how to improve quality of education. So we call it enhancement-led evaluation, and it's an operating principle in all evaluations in this system. And the purpose is then to evaluate and to support the development activities and promote change in the evaluation object. So I think that's also our collaborational strength. So in overall, I think that we have a lot of different kind of national and also institutional collaboration ways, management practices, and then I think that at the moment especially, we have a lot of needs to discuss together what is happening in the world, in the working life, what is happening in the field of education, to understand also this time after COVID that showed us a lot of different kind of challenges and problems that we actually have in the field of in the field of education. Okay, then I have 3 cases related to this, but before that, just a few challenges in higher education. At the moment, we have very strong pressure in Finland to get more students into the higher education institutions. And as you can see, we are below the OECD at the moment. And at the same time, we don't have any promises from our government in this financial situation to have more resources in it. So it means that we have to kind of discuss about that, what kind of pedagogy and how can we support the quality of education, even though we would take more students into the institutions. We also know that the digitalization is a crucial issue in higher education to stay in the top in pedagogy and in resources. And it also means that institutions need money, competencies, investments in digitalization. Then 3 cases. First one is the quality work, and this is a national level. Last year, we had a really overall national evaluation of the higher education pedagogy, and the final report gives us a lot of good examples of that, how to improve pedagogical leadership in the institutions. And this is the first time that actually we are doing this kind of national evaluation of higher education pedagogical leadership and pedagogy. So this is really, really interesting. And you can also find the notes in English. It's also report is in Finnish, but you can see it in English also, the abstract of it. And then at all the universities and all the universities of applied sciences were in this quality assurance or quality work together. Then another national case, which is DigiVision. It's related to digitalization, of course, and also this one is a project-based development that we have all the universities and all the universities of applied sciences in this project. And we have very ambitious goals to create kind of a shared platform for study courses in higher education to serve continuous learning and also budgeting from the government to this project. And then finally, just the one case, because I was working just 7 years in the University of Helsinki, and this was something that I'm really proud of it. It's the Teachers Academy, so it's the institutional level, the network that teachers, top pedagogical development, they can go together. They get some resources of it to develop teaching practices, to develop pedagogy, and we also know that university is promoting them a lot also in public. So this was my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susanna. But I think everyone noted, as I could see from the faces, I can see, is the shared governance and the aims of quality assurance, which you mentioned, that it's not really a punitive one. It's quality assurance is about how to really improve things. So it's basically like a self feedback. And I really wonder how did in general in Finland the system, or how was it achieved that this kind of attitude was developed on the quality assurance? Because it's not enough, I think, if one or two policymakers decide, okay, the quality assurance will change now from the attitude. It has to be like a collaborative attitude on how we are approaching quality assurance.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's the kind of a way that we have to negotiate all over again. And I think it's very deeply in Finnish culture that we have this autonomy in our universities and universities of applied sciences. They, for example, create their own curriculums, even though they have a strong collaboration. Just because of the applicants, for example, they have to have the same kind of idea of that, what is the content in the curriculums, but still all the universities and universities of applied sciences, they are autonomous in that way. But I think it's in Finnish culture that we have kind of a time to discuss about that, and the quality assurance is something that we are proud of in that sense, that we trust for each other and we can go to another institution and have this evaluation, and it's easier when we know that it's not about that we are trying to find the mistakes, but we are trying to find the best practices and of course give recommendations. But it's always in that level that we are trying to develop.
I think we lost Susanna, but
in that sense.
Sorry, we lost you in the last two sentences.
Okay, the last two sentences, they were maybe that I think that it's very deep in our culture, this kind of way of thinking about the quality of education.
Thank you very much. I think this is the cultural aspect which we cannot really teach to another country.
Exactly. Yeah, that's really difficult. Yeah, but one point is actually that I already picked up before is about this dialogue, community building. It's the same kind of competencies that you need for that you build the trust together. It means that.
Thank you very much. Let's continue the discussion by checking what were the answers from our participants on this question: how to make higher education institutions attractive places to support student and staff well-being, how to make, and it mentions short contracts, I guess how not to make, what are the challenges, of course, working conditions, precarity, workload balance, new challenges, time, professionality, attractive conditions, career progression, gender inequality, stress and burnout, working hours, adequate resources, flexible working time. So there are lots of answers here about how to support, but what are also the challenges, and we have to select from the answers accordingly. I wonder, what is your opinion on these answers, and what were your answers to this question from your national context? Who would like to start?
Well, we didn't really receive any strong responses to those questions. As you probably have seen from the one of the slides by Susanna, the lack of resources in Italian system, we are probably the second least financed country in Europe, which makes gives you the answer of the institution that we received from the government. A strong push has been given through the recovery fund. We have received as institution quite a high resources, but those resources are mostly project-based. Those resources cannot be used to sustain the system. I'm very much worried also about the sustainability of the things that we are setting up through those resources. And with the students, students are not supported, for example, through services. There is a huge divide between different institutions in different areas of the country, for example, in terms of all residences, in terms of services that are offered to the students, because in our system, part of the contribution is given by the regional authorities. There are a lot of imbalances in Italy from this point of view. What is really missing is the idea that the staff, through the unions, but also through the institution, have a clear idea of what are the challenges, but also a clear idea of what could be the answer to those challenges. Dialogue is missing in Italy completely.
You said the dialogue is missing, but you also kind of said that there is no complete full knowledge about what are the challenges. Do I understand well? So do you think that there is not enough like research or studies about really measuring what are the challenges and what kind of solutions could support policy developments?
There are studies, there are information, not on everything. For example, on the divide between academics and staff, this is an issue that it's a huge issue in our country. There are not so many studies and information on that. This would be worth analyzing a bit more. Let's say the organizational culture of the university in Italy, which is a problem of the public sector in Italy, to be honest, not only of the university, but in terms of lack of resources for student services or in the salaries, data concerning the impact of precarization in university, we have a lot of information on that. I mean, the people who are in charge, the government and the different authorities, have all the information they need to address the challenges. Indeed, I can understand within some economic constraints, but we can discuss about that also, because sometimes the issue is not really the resources, but how resources are allocated.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Who would like to respond to these answers? Maybe Iris, what were your, let's say, 3 most important challenges / solutions on this issue?
Yeah, I mean, when I wrote our position on academic careers a few days ago, the first part of it with the 3 aspects that were highlighted the most were what is here as well: working conditions, precarity, short contracts. So I would say this is overall exactly what the problems are. Though I would say there's even more problem. There's also a cultural problem in higher education. There's this idea of we need innovation, so we need a lot of change in who's working in our institutions, and having too many permanent staff is a problem for the innovation aspect of higher education and research as well. And I mean, to a certain extent, this is correct. We cannot have the same staff body for, I don't know, 80 years and then eventually have a turnover. We see how it's going right now for public administration in Europe. In many countries, it's not ideal. But it doesn't explain the imbalance we have nowadays. And there's a huge imbalance towards precarious job situations. And I would say the reasoning behind it is more of an exploitative nature. So there's also this problem of attitude that a lot of people say, we need this, we need innovation, and it's unfair if some people get the jobs and others don't. Well, it's like with any other job field, right? There's a chance you will not get a permanent position, but that doesn't make a permanent position bad. Yeah, so this is one thing, and also one thing that sticks out to me is the gender inequality aspect. Because I mean, talking about funding and working conditions is very easy, I would say. But regarding this, it's also there was this UNICEF project, and it generated extremely good data. And what came out of it was that 2/3 of all students and staff in higher education in Europe have experienced sexual harassment or violence, in gender-based violence, that people are not willing to report these incidents because they don't feel like there's any avenues where they will get support. So there's a huge problem towards sexism and racism actually as well in higher education, and ableism to, the disadvantages for people with disabilities. And in that sense, what we have created is a very homogeneous staff body to some extent. Most people, you come from very specific backgrounds, academic backgrounds, well-situated and so on, and people who have disadvantaged backgrounds have little chance to even start with the PhDs, which creates then other challenges later on as to how can you deal with a diverse student body if the people in the staff are not even diverse, for example. So yeah, this would be some two aspects I would like to highlight that might get forgotten sometimes, maybe. But overall, the working conditions for sure is the biggest problem, and the funding behind it.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask Mr. Vido from the European Commission about what is your opinion on these outcomes. But actually, I would like to ask specifically you about what Iris was talking about, the harassment issues in academia and the sexism and racism. I have a feeling that academics are really left alone with their problems. There are so many precariety, so much project-based contracts that I'm not really sure that there is a good system of supporting really this kind of issues and to complain concerning working conditions. Of course, the trade unions are providing such kind of help, but not every members feel access to the trade unions. Sometimes it is also a question about the fair, that if an academic is joining the trade unions, it can have negative consequences on their future academic work. We know several countries where it is the case. Will the upcoming initiative deal with the issue of support mechanisms to suggest to set up for institutions and at national level for academics?
Thank you for the question. Very, very specific and in the meantime, very big issue indeed. And I think it touches upon many different things. So now we are not preparing any particular initiative to tackle this kind of cases. However, obviously the academic freedom is a topic that is increasingly on the agenda. We see a lot of threats related to, teaching freedom for sure, academic freedom in general, pressure, either external or within the institution itself being applied. Of course, I think that all stems to, of course, geopolitical context, but there is also an aspect which is what many of you already spoke about, which is a precarization of the careers and having to work with short contracts on with project-based funding, with no clear career path or a very difficult career progression. That, of course, will create some sort of environment where these kind of practices can this kind of malpractices, this kind of crimes, in some cases, can actually operate without too much consequences. I think it's very important here to stress the role of the union and the role of governance within the institution that you already mentioned. It's very important, and we want to also tackle that in the proposals to in our recommendations, that staff, and actually whether it is academic staff or administrative staff, doesn't matter, actually should be involved in the governance structure also, because the governance is supposed to be protecting them. So if they are not represented in the governance of their institutions, who will protect them? And so it is absolutely essential, and that goes hand in hand with good working condition that make you less subject to pressure, and also give you maybe the freedom to work somewhere else if things don't work as you would like in your own institution. So I think it is it can be in some cases, yes, a consequence of the precarization of the work that we should aim at eradicating. Together, I think the ESG that was mentioned, the reform of the ESG, which is not the EU leading the work on that, but that could be a very good place to establish as a standard at European, in the sense Bologna level, some kind of standards in terms of compliance through quality assurance of institutions, for example, that they do have strong measure in place to prevent these kind of unacceptable behaviors.
Thank you very much. Susanna, what is your opinion about this question and the outcomes? What were your 3 choices for Finland?
I would add, first of all, the dialogue, which is missing and was already mentioned. The dialogue is the one that is, I hope that it's in the answers to tackle the challenges, and then also leadership. I would add leadership, and it's not something that is against the academic freedom, but it's something that actually can support and enables a lot of things in the universities, in the higher education institutions. And I know that in Finland we have done a lot of work to develop the academic leadership in that sense, that actually it gives us a lot of tools to know what is going on in the field if we support all the stuff with good leadership. So I would add leadership or leading here.
Thank you very much. Actually, you kind of answered to the next Slido question, which I would like to ask the colleagues to open. What do you think are the ingredients of good collaborative education leadership in the higher education sector in your country? And while you are thinking about your own answer, I would like to ask Iris from the Students' Unions, because you mentioned about good cooperation with rectors' councils, but good cooperation also with the academics in Germany, for example, on a budget. And this is very good, but is this collaboration regular? Do you have like a forum where you are usually meeting, or it is just kind of ad hoc and based on personal knowing each other?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where the issue lies very much exactly. It very much depends, let's say, on the higher education system or the country, how things work. But in many cases, it's based on ad hoc, and it's not very systemized, and it plays into what we discussed today already, the lack of really systematic social dialogue in higher education on all governance levels. It's better on the higher education institutional level, like the rectors will talk to their student unions regularly, and the staff councils very often are in contact with the local student union, but also not always. But the higher you go on the levels, the more it's unsystemized, especially on national levels. On European level, it is more systemized again, for example. And yeah, it's also a matter of what was just said, that the leaderships and rectors conferences are a form of leadership. Also proactively reach out, for example, to the students and to the staff councils, because we are much more fluctuant, and especially students, our mandate change in between 1 year, so knowledge gets lost. But the rectors and the leadership, the professors, they really have it in their hands to ensure that there is systematic dialogue together with policy makers who can also enshrine it in the constitutions or in the higher education laws at least. So yeah, it's a problem for sure.
Okay, thank you. Let's see the answers, and let's discuss about really this issue about stability in collaboration and regularity. What are the ingredients of good collaborative education leadership? And still answers are coming here, and stability was also highlighted. Social dialogue, trust, very important. Teamwork, salary, good. Respect, dialogue, openness, good. Decision-making, participation of all, democratic governance, knowledge-based, permanent contracts, teamwork, situational awareness, curiosity, shared understanding, sustainable funding, shared future vision, respect and trust, work organization, collaboration, respect for students, very important, independence, shared values, culture of sharing. Maybe I would like to ask all the speakers about your opinion. What would you highlight the most? European Commission? Mel?
Well, all of it is extremely relevant. Maybe I would add one element, which is in order to have a systemic, constructive dialogue with all the different partners, you need to give people the time and space to participate to it. Because it is very easy to create structures, but if that just adds to potential participants' burden in terms of workload, in terms of participation, with no incentive to participate, then the dialogue may not be as impactful as one wish to have it. So I would say that participation to this dialogue should be considered as part of the normal work and be strongly encouraged.
Okay, because we still have some time and our participants are not so much eager to raise questions and comments in the chat box, I would like to have a follow-up question to you. You are preparing 2 council recommendations or 2 European Commission initiatives. One of them is the attractiveness of the career. One of them is attractive career framework. How you as European Commission were collaborating with important stakeholders to prepare these initiatives?
So the way we worked on this initiative, we had several studies, which by the way highlighted all the lack of proper data and study for academic staff. There is a strong bias toward research careers, but not so much on the other ones. In the context of these studies, of course, there were a lot of many different consultation rounds, surveys, interviews, and so on to prepare, let's say, data pool and evidence-based proposals. We had a call for evidence that was open until mid last week, where we asked everyone to contribute with their input on the call for evidence. So now we're analyzing it. Of course, now we're going to be drafting the proposal itself that will be made public toward the end of next month, early spring this year. And from there, there will be a space for debate with everyone to look at what we have put in our proposals, to provide their opinion, and it's going to be discussed with the European Economic and Social Committee and every national authority, because this will be discussed in the context of the European Council, where every member state has their voice. And I am sure that there will be many other room for consultation with the stakeholders, especially when it comes to academic career. Social partners are absolutely essential in every discussion we have on this topic.
Thank you. And I also know that your predecessor and your colleagues participated in our social dialogue meetings, organized lots of stakeholders forums where we were invited. So this was a very good collaboration, actually. And we really hope that the initiative will give very strong messages to member states to really do changes with effective social dialogue with the trade unions, employers, and then of course effective collaboration with other stakeholders and involve the students in really shaping the systems concerning attractive career framework. I would like to ask your views about these answers also from the other side. Maybe let's start with Susanna.
Yeah, maybe I wouldn't add anything. It's all here. Very, very good. But I would maybe pick up the knowledge-based thing here, because I was also are part of the culture in my presentation, and as we already noticed, it's really difficult area to develop, but something that we can really do, everyone in the Europe especially, is to emphasize the knowledge-based decision making and in its importance in European area, because we all know that in the world there is going on things that we wouldn't like to see, about the misunderstanding and fake news and all those comments that are based on nothing. So I think this is something that we can really emphasize together, that this is something that we trust to science, we trust to research, and we also do knowledge-based decisions in Europe. So this is really important. And it's part of our shared values also, I think, overall in the Europe.
It's interesting, but 2 webinars earlier on early childhood education, this was exactly the other message which we had about the knowledge-based education and the importance of knowledge-based education to be enhanced. Maybe Iris, what is your opinion about the outcomes? What would you like to add or highlight?
I find especially the question of trust interesting, because it's so connected to cultural aspects of countries also. I'm from a country where it's very much part of our culture to distrust each other. Everybody fights against each other. Politics are based on doing things in a closed room and not to share. But then sometimes when I talk to my Nordic colleagues, especially, where the cultural environment is more based on dialogue and being open, and I mean, in Sweden you can even find the tax information of your neighbor, basically, you know, it creates a very different atmosphere in how also in the higher education sector people interact with each other. And when I went from the German level to the European level, it also struck me immediately that it's so different. If I talk to the European Commission or if I'm in the Bologna process, there's much more trust, there's much more openness. And by also being informative and coming with good ideas and not being only critical, basically, this also reinforces then to being able to collaboratively work. And yeah, I think especially in those countries where distrust is very much part of the culture, there's really also cultural change needed. And otherwise, you will not get the social dialogue that is fruitful.
Alessandro, what is your opinion especially about what Iris said about trust and social dialogue? And I guess as trade union, this is the most important for us, social dialogue and effective social dialogue, not only social monologue when we are invited by some governments about this is the initiative, bye-bye. How do you think how to develop trust or better dialogue?
Well, again, there are different levels. Trust between the institution or unions and government, it's a political matter that's very complicated, and we still have to work on that. Dialogue is crucial, but again, a couple of things that I propose to after the first reading of this display, and they are related with trust. Training. This is something crucial. We need to train ourselves to work with the other. We need to train ourselves to dialogue. We need to train ourselves to do things differently. This is something that was also said by Iris, and I do agree with that. Simplification or debureaucratization. If I look at the situation in Italy, for example, the introduction of the lump sum approach, that it's a very good approach to the management of fundings, doesn't really have any impact, because in our system we still have to report and budget as we did before. So we have the lump sum, but we still have to do things as we had to. The Erasmus give us, the Erasmus Plus program gives us a lot of tools, for example, for trainship, job shadowing activities, having people moving and knowing each other in different countries. But still, there is a lot of bureaucracy sometimes, lack of fundings, resources that are used do not really support people from, example, I work in Napoli, low-income workers. Can they afford to travel by Erasmus? They don't, or students, even worse than that. So there is a lot of work to be done on those things, I think, together, which are the prerequisite for trust. If we support people, if we give them the possibility to work together, to train together, to travel a bit, then we build trust, which is Europe that we want.
Indeed, indeed. Any last minute comments from anyone?
Well, I would just like to add on the trust issue. This is something that I often say. Trust cannot be regulated, but the condition for trust can be built. And this is what we should be aiming for. Indeed, there are different cultures across Europe, and some places where there is more space for trust than in others. But it's also what we're doing at European level, trying to work together, work out solutions, find good practice elsewhere that we would not have thought on our own, and a lot of self-introspection as well, including at European level, on how to bring more opportunities and simplification for others, for example. And many people that we meet are so full of goodwill and energy, and it's such a shame to not be able to provide everyone the opportunity they deserve. And in general, well, I will just say that in the end, it comes down to how much money and funding, indeed, but education should not be seen as spending, but as an investment. So it's not money lost. On the contrary, it's only an investment that we can all benefit from.
Anyone else? Last conclusive words?
Well, I mean, I think the key takeaway is that there's three aspects that we need. We need engagement, because this is what makes the academic community. If we lose this form of engagement and these kind of ways to work together, we lose the European way of higher education, and we will turn into this very Americanized version of being in a consumer higher education world rather than a democratic participatory one. And for this, we need to set the conditions, and the conditions are what were put here forward. Things like trust and social dialogue, which are very easy to do in one sense because it doesn't require money, but then again, very hard because it's a cultural matter. And on the other side, we also need to set the frameworks to be able to participate. And this connects very much to also money and workers' rights and salaries. So it's and we really need to pay attention to it, because we are in a world right now where there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of attacks against academia as well, and even from the political side. So even the more democracy is on the play, the more we need to take care that higher education stays democratic and participatory.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And actually, we arrived to the end of our webinars. I think it was very interesting to have this discussion, because what I can really conclude is like we are on the same point. European Commission, policymakers, teacher trade unions, students unions, and education employers, we are all saying the same. We need to support the system, we need to improve the system, and we need to do it in a collaborative manner, and we need to really improve dialogue and collaboration among each other and with other stakeholders based on trust. How to achieve this trust? It's a huge question mark, of course. It depends on national stakeholders and social partners, but I think there is light at the end of the horizon. Thank you very much for your active participation. I also would like to thank the participants for being here and answering to our Slido questions. If you would like to be involved more in the ELNA network, please check our website. You can also submit research outcomes. You can also submit good inspiring cases. Alessandro here is also a very important member of the research committee of the project, which defines and analyzes good research, and we are, as policymakers, to try to align ourselves with their findings. And if you have any ideas about webinars for the future or any actions we can do together, we are very open to that. Thank you very much again, and I really hope we will keep in touch. Have a nice afternoon. Bye-bye.